Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. I know it's been a while. Too long, perhaps, but we are back. We have returned. Strikes are over. Things are looking better on their end. I feel better about doing this on my end, so here we are. I guess you could call that a little bit of a hiatus, for lack of a better term, and lack of communication as well, so I do apologize. Hopefully, you were at least following the TikTok and the YouTube because I have been posting shorts and TikToks on there to keep you satiated. So there's that. But do look forward to an up ramp as movies are kind of we're getting there again. We're getting there. But yes, nonetheless, welcome to and welcome back to the Dom Trap. I am your host Dom. I am your host, your editor, director, creator, your DJ. Of course. And most importantly, I'm your first, your last, and your everything. Welcome. It's been a while. I'm so glad to be back. I'm glad to see that you're doing well. Thank you for listening. I just wanted to get a few reviews off, just get back into the swing of things a little bit. Also, if you haven't been keeping up with me, I am a co-host on the Run It Back podcast on the Bros Who Think Network. So make sure you go and check that out as well if you want to see more of me. There we review older films and just kind of gush about them a little bit. So that's been fun. Shout out to Lynn, by the way. Big shout outs, man. Big shout out. Shout out to Lex, bro. Shout out to Judd. Shout out to Greg. Shout out to Pruitt. Shout out to Angelica. Shout out to Tina. Shout out to everybody, man. Shout out to everybody that's supporting. Shout out to Jazz, by the way. But yeah, we are back. Thank you for tuning in and listening and giving your support and asking. Oh my God. Shout out to Hiley, bro. Listen, I wouldn't be sitting here right now if it wasn't for Hiley. Telling y'all this right now because he was one of the ones most recently to be like, hey, bro, where's the pod at, man? I need the pod in my life. I miss you, dog. I miss you. We need to, I'm like, all right, bet. Then, as a matter of fact, Lex just texted me and was like, hey, bro, we got to work. And then Lynn was just like, hey, bro, we got something coming up Sunday. I'm like, all right, cool. All right, I see what everybody's doing. It feels like all the signs are leading me back in this direction to get back into content creation and all that good stuff. Recently, I was just on TikTok. I'm not even on there a lot. I was just on there and I was just scrolling through and I was looking at my own TikToks from when I was streaming. I was like, bro, I had so much fun streaming. So that may be another thing that you can look forward to seeing me do in the future because I miss it and I miss y'all. So there's that. But yes, now let's see. Enough of me gushing a little bit. Let's get into some good stuff. So I got some reviews for you today. Today I do want to talk about one of my most anticipated films of the year. I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, this looks really, really interesting. It looks good. The trailer was well shot. I like the performances that I'm seeing in the trailers, except for one in particular, but I was like, nonetheless, it may be okay. Let me just see how I feel about it. That film, by the way, is The Exorcist Believer. And The Exorcist, the original 1973 film, is and has been one of my favorite horror films of all time. My mom traumatized me with that film at a young age, so I've stuck with this film for a very long time. And I've always loved it. Every time I watch it, I'm like, okay, I see why. Every time I watch it, I'm like, okay, I see why this is one of the greatest horror films and also one of the greatest films ever created. I feel like mostly, I'm not going to say everything worked fine because that film surprisingly has a body count. Similar to how Poltergeist was. People did die on set. They did die during filming and everything. So I'm going to say mostly everything went okay with that film. And I went to a showing on Sunday. They had a 50th anniversary showing the actual film, an upscaled version of it. You got to see some kind of unseen footage about the location. The director talked about it and talked about how he figured that he would shoot there. He talked about how the location had to be altered in certain ways to make things seem like they were how they weren't. So it was a very interesting new viewing of that film. Granted, just a teeny bit boring, but hey, That's neither here nor there. I love the film nonetheless, but seeing that really got my hype to a new level for The Exorcist Believer. I'm like, there's no way that this can go wrong compared to the previous sequels and the TV show that we got before. I was like, there's no way this can be as bad or close to as bad as those were. And I regret to inform you that that is unfortunately the case. I really wanted to love this movie. I really did. But this is not that film that I was looking forward to. It's first. Let me get into some of this, right? Okay, so like I said, I saw the trailer. I was excited. The trailer just did something to me. I was just like, okay, this looks scary. This looks genuinely terrifying. It looks like it should be gross. There are aspects of the original film that are gross, such as Reagan peeing on the floor in front of the company. Like, that was disgusting. And to see it again, I was just like, yeah, this is crazy. And there are a few other moments in the film, in the original film, that I was like, I remember this scene, but I don't remember it being shot this way. And then the next scene being something like exactly what it was. I was like, okay, here we are. But this film, I just realized here that the story is by Danny McBride. I knew that it was directed by David Gordon Green. And let me get into this real quick. So David Gordon Green also did him and Danny McBride, by the way, they both did the new Halloween films. And I feel like whoever is giving these dudes money to do this is asking for these franchises to be ruined. Now, don't get me wrong. I loved the Halloween that they redid. Halloween, was it like Halloween Begins? I can't even remember the name of it off the bat, but I like the reboot that they just did. The sequel was the Halloween Kills. I was not really a fan of. The Evil Dies Night. Yeah, something else died that night, and that was my love for the Halloween franchise. Halloween Kills. Halloween Ends. Yeah, no, another no. I was like, how are they going to do this? How are they going to get rid of this slasher? And they did it figuratively and literally in the sense. And I think that Miramax is actually trying to sell the rights to the Halloween franchise. So that kind of says a lot about how that franchise went. But with this one, I was like, okay, there's no way they can mess this up. And then as more details came out, and I realized that Universal bought the rights to the Exorcist franchise for $400 million, which is not a small number at all in today's movie climate. They bought it for $400 million. And I believe that there's already like set to be a trilogy of this franchise. I'm not with it. I can't be. I can't be. I'm gonna watch it. Don't get me wrong, but the fact that they bought this for $400 million and this is the product that we received is a travesty. Now, let me actually talk about the film a little bit, right? So we got Leslie Odom Jr., who plays the dad of a 13-year-old child who is friends with another 13-year-old child. And they get this idea to go into the woods to talk to spirits. Now, I mean, even with me just saying that part, you kind of expect like, oh, they're going to talk to an ancestor or someone that's no longer living on this plane. And that's exactly what it is. But here's the thing. The movie does not tell you why they choose to do it. They don't give you enough. For example, I'm not going to spoil much, but there's a scene where she takes her deceased mom's scarf and the dad kind of snaps at her about it. And it takes from the time from him leaving their home to getting her to school for him to apologize. And like, that's all the context we get there. We don't really get to see much about their relationship besides the fact that he's like loving and caring, but we don't really get to see that reciprocated. So her and her friend that she has at school are talking to another child in their classroom, and they're like, hey, we're going to go do this. Tell everybody that we're going to be at your house, and if our parents call, just tell them that we're there. Of course, parents are going to find out anyway. So they go out into the woods, they have a candle, they have like a possession, and they're like, yeah, we're going to go talk to the dead. And I'm like, but why? Whose idea? Who even started this? They never answered this in the film, by the way. They don't tell you why these little girls decided to go out into the woods to do this, besides what they show you in the beginning, which isn't, like I said, it isn't much. So of course these children, they get possessed by demons. I know this is a little bit like it's a big escalation, but like these children get possessed by demons, and we have to watch their parents freak out and figure out what's going on. We got to see their faith be tested, and it's just like I don't feel any of this compared to when I watched the original Exorcist Sunday. I was like, okay, I understand the confusion. I understand why everyone is freaking out the way they are. I understand why the priests are acting like this. You know, they've never seen anything like this in their life. In this film, it's just like everything is so matter of fact. For example, their neighbor works at a hospital, like the main hospital in the small town. And she just happens to be there when the girls get brought in. She just happens to be one of the nurses to take care of one of the daughters, actually her neighbor. And it's just like, okay, I get it. I get what y'all are doing, but it's like, why? Like, do more with the characters to show me why they're in these situations. And then it's just the parents, for the most part, are the performances are just not what you would expect them to be. Because I know that if my daughter went out into the woods and conjured up a spirit and was possessed, I would not act remotely similar to the way that this dad did in this film. He's still caring. He's still trying to figure out what's going on. He's so confused to the point where he's just like, okay, I don't know. He just like sends her to an insane asylum. And it's just like, no, bro, like, no, you got to do whatever you got to do. I get that. But have some kind of haste to it. Don't just like sit around and wait and see what's going on. And I just could not get behind the performances here. And then when it comes to the scares, they are, I don't want to say they're non-existent because they use a cheap tactic of showing the story. And then while the story's being told, they'll flash to something like disturbing, like dogs fighting, and make it like super loud and just like a jump scare. And I get it, but that's not effective on me anymore as a movie viewer. And yes, and I think the most irritating thing about this film is the fact that they brought back Ellen Burstyn, who played the mom in the original Exorcist. They brought her back. And this might be one of the worst cameos I've ever seen in a film. When I say they brought this woman back, and she's never done any Exorcist sequels besides this one, outside of the original film. This is the only Exorcist sequel that she's decided to do. They brought her here, and they give her nothing to work with. I can tell that she kind of wants to be here, but not really. You can tell it's for her bag. But she is not happy to be here. And neither was I to see it that way. So to see that, to see how her character was handled, and at the end see how it's going to progress, I'm like, whatever, bro. Let's just go. Let's get these movies out of here. If you're gonna have this at Halloween Horror Nights, go ahead and do what you got to do. Universal, get your bag. But this is disrespectful to the original film. I will just say that this is totally disrespectful to the original film. I love Ellen Burstyn. I'm glad that she did this. She did this for a good cause, actually. I believe that her salary wasn't like a base pay, but she wanted to start a scholarship for young actors and actresses to get into the film industry, which is a dope look, by the way. I actually do absolutely love that. But I think that this should have been a better film to do this with. And it's like, I get it, you know. I'm there with you. I get it. But no, don't do it. Anyway, this film is bad. And if I have to give it a score out of 10, I have to go with maybe a 4. This is just one of the most disappointing films that I've seen all year. I hate that it had to be that way. But yeah, this was not something that I was expecting to happen at all. I did see some of the reviews, and I'm like, okay, I see how people are. I see how people are taking this film. But I was a little bit hopeful that it was going to be just a little bit better. So yeah, I can't really recommend this to everybody. Not even the best of horror films or horror fans, I mean. But this is just a bad horror film for the year. It's a bad start to October and the spooky season that we are upon now. So Go and check it out if you really want to see The Exorcist Believer. If not, skip it. Wait until it comes out on streaming services. Watch it for free later. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. And apparently, the sequel, Exorcist Deceiver, is scheduled to be released on April 18th, 2025. So do with that what you will. We'll see how things progress from there. All right. So to go into a more progressive direction for this podcast right now, I want to work my way up this time. Normally I'm kind of all over the place. Sometimes I'll end up on a bad review and I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. But we're going to just move up. The next film I do want to discuss is The Creator, which is a new science fiction film directed by Gareth Edwards, who also directed Star Wars Rogue One, which, if you watch the TikTok that I made about it, Star Wars Rogue One is one of my favorite Star Wars films. So I had some kind of expectation set for this one. And I want to say that for the most part, my expectations were met. The Creator is a beautiful film with okay performances. John David Washington is a star. I just wish that he had more to do within this film. This movie seems like it's setting something up. And in order for it to do that, he had to kind of be an avatar for us. Like, we had to take place in his shoes for the story, for us to understand the story and understand what his motivations are. So there are moments where we get these flashbacks and we're like, okay, so this is why he's motivated to do this. Okay, now let's see how the movie's going to show us what he does in certain situations. Gemma Chan is also in this film. I love Gemma Chan so much, but she's phenomenal. Granted, she's another character in this film that doesn't have a whole lot to do. Ken Watanabe is also in this film, and for the most part, the performances are solid. Like I said before, they're solid. This film shows a lot, but doesn't really have much to say that we haven't already heard. This movie's about AI and how human nature relies too much on AI, thus taking everything into a grim direction. Let me just say that. We've seen this time and time again. We've seen this with so many other movies. We've basically seen Terminator so many times, told over and over again, worse and worse. But this film does it in a way where it's like more interesting, I guess you could say. It's a little bit more understandable. They kind of tell, like I said, they do flashbacks. They also do kind of short news clippings throughout the movie to kind of show you the state of the world. Why there's a thing called New Asia, and we have America. It's a lot that goes into it, but they don't do enough to tell us this, right? It's just all told but not shown, if you get that. So, our character, John David Washington, our protagonist, if you will, if you've seen Tenet, our protagonist, he is in love, and things don't really go the way that he expects. So then later, AI has just kind of progressed and progressed. He's a war veteran, I guess you could call him a war vet, but he's injured, so he kind of has to rely on robots to live. Like, he has a fake leg, a fake arm. He's all kind of just broken, but he has to rely on this stuff to live an actual life. And there's this special weapon that they have to go and exterminate before the world is ruined. So he goes to find it with this crew because he gets recruited because he has a motivation to go and find his wife or ex-wife or whatever you want to call her. And they basically trick him, of course. Who didn't see this coming, right? So they trick him. They bring him on the mission. He finds the weapon, and it turns out to be a little AI child who has the ability to basically turn things on and off telepathically, which is something that none of the other AI robots have the ability to do. And this is a big issue because, this thing can grow. It's going to get more powerful and could eventually turn off everything in the world. And then, what do the humans have to rely on? So, of course, it's a big, scary thing. The Americans want to take this weapon and control it to basically make the world do, bow down to their will and do what they want to do. Big Americans are evil. AI is evil type of film. We've seen this before. But like I said, this film just It's very beautiful. Don't get me wrong. It's a feast to the eyes. But I walked out saying, what was this for? I know who it was for, but what was the big story they wanted to tell that's new? Like, is this just going to set up a franchise? Is this just something original, which I'm okay with. I'm all for original films doing what they have to do to get something started. But I was like, I really didn't feel much at all by the end of it. It felt super predictable. It was a little bit on the long side, but I enjoyed it for the most part. And for that reason, I want to say, oh yeah, let me talk about one more thing. The cinematography in this film is the chef's kiss. It's probably the greatest thing about this film. The shots of New Asia, the shots of a big looming space station that's about to launch nukes onto the planet. Crazy shots. It's a shot in space. I loved every shot that they did, showing the entire atmosphere of what was going on. I like the creative direction to show what was happening through security cameras. It was great. Don't get me wrong. But the story was so lackluster. So predictable. It felt like something out of a video game. I'm not going to lie to you. But yes, with that being said, I do want to give this film a 7 out of 10. Mainly for those cinematography and original elements. But yeah, I just didn't really feel like it had much to say. Which is I'm not going to say it's disappointing, but I feel like if the movie had something to say, if it did more with what it had, I would have absolutely loved it. I want to say the first 30 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm on board. But as the movie went on, and things that I wanted to happen didn't happen, and I was like, okay, I get it. I see where we are. This next film here that I want to discuss. It is October, 'tis the season, spooky season, whatever. Ha ha ha, hocus pocus, all that good stuff. This film came out last week. And I'm not going to lie to you, I had no expectations for this film. I barely even wanted to go and see it. But I was like, you know what? Why not? There's been 10 of these. I've only seen about 6 or 7. Let me just see what's happening in the world of Saw. So this movie is Saw 10, to be precise. And out of all the Saw films, I only like maybe 3. Maybe 4 if we're pushing it. Maybe 4 films. But 3 at max. Or 3 minimum. There were moments where I was surprised at how good I felt about this film. There are moments where I was like, oh, okay, I like this. I like this different kind of story that's being told within this universe. It's not, the cut and paste, the copy and paste of what we've gotten years before, time and time again. This is something new. And I'm like, okay, this kind of feels like a Lifetime movie, but I'm going to stick with it. And for the most part, everybody does their job with this film. The direction that this movie takes is great. The music is great. Apparently, the composer for these movies, let me actually get his name. I don't want to be wrong here. Let's see. I want to say it was Charlie Clouser. He's done, I think, all of the movies here. As far as the sound goes, like the music, he's done them all. So I think he's like one of the longest running composers in a film franchise, which is kind of crazy. But yes, Tobin Bell, the old creepy man from Saw, he does return. He is in this film. This film takes place between the first and second films. Granted, it's Saw 10. He looks older. Everybody looks older, which is so funny. But we know already that this character has brain cancer, and he's trying to figure out a way to basically cut the cancer and live a healthy and happy life. But he still has this murderous tendency to harm people that aren't doing what they should be doing. For example, he almost walks in on this guy that's robbing this old man in the hospital. And he conjures up a trap in his mind. And we're watching it. And it's like, this is kind of disgusting. It's impractical, but it's disgusting. But then he kind of knocks on the window, scares the guy. The guy puts his stuff back. So he's like trying to do some kind of good in the world. Granted, he can't save everyone. He has a God complex, I guess you could say. So he gets he goes to a I guess like some kind of cancer meeting. He meets other people with cancer, and they are basically saying, "Oh, I have stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I know this is the end for me, but I'm just glad to kind of tell my story." So he meets this guy that was there, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, I don't have cancer anymore." He looks good. He's like, "Yeah, this is my scar." He shows his stomach or whatever from when he got his pancreas cut out, I guess. And John Kramer gets the idea, and he goes, "Okay, yeah, I believe this." So he looks into it, and they're like, "Yeah, you come to Mexico, we'll do the surgery, and that's it. We have to keep this on the low because the government can't find out about what we're doing because we're doing it so discreet or whatever." So he's like, "Okay, this sounds perfectly fine." So he goes to Mexico. He meets everyone. They bump his head up. They tell him that, we're going to get this out of you. You're going to be safe. So he's getting the surgery done, and he's like halfway awake throughout this whole thing, right? He's halfway awake, and he sees footage, and he's like, "Okay, that doesn't look right." So then they do the surgery. They send him on his way, and I guess they didn't expect him to come back and show any kind of compassion. But he goes out. He gets like flowers to give to someone, and he comes back, and the place is deserted. Mind you, this is like a big Mexican mansion. The place is deserted. Also, let me tell you this: before he gets there, he gets attacked by some jump out boys. They get out the car, they point guns at him, they put a mask over his head, and bring him to the location. He gets there, everything's ransacked. He finds a TV with a DVD player. He plays the DVD, and it's the footage that he saw of them cutting into him while he was halfway awake. He realizes that he's been duped. He then takes the bandage off of his head, and nothing's there. And when I saw this, I was like, "Oh gosh, I like this." I hate to say that I like it, but I actually love it. That really got me. The fact that you can scam John Kramer is kind of wild. And they thought they could get away with it. They tried their best. But yeah, it just did not happen that way, of course, because the film has to be a film. So John Kramer basically hunts them down and puts them into traps, and is basically saying, "Hey, if you really want to live, play the game." And that's when the film really gets fun, because you get to see these people actually freak out and say, "Hey, I don't want to lose my head, so I'm going to do what I got to do." And it falls into the same trap that the other films fall into, as far as they have the trap, they want to live, and they get so close to living, and then they just meet their end. But this film does it in a way where it's like, okay, I get it. He's still kind of rusty. It's between the first and two films. It's not super crazy elaborate with the traps yet. But these poor people were just trying to get some money to better their situation. One chick is on drugs. And the main chick, by the way, she's just like super money hungry scammer. She tells lies to get to where she is. Terrible person all around. And this movie does a good job of making you feel bad for John Kramer, as well as the people that are being trapped in this film. So, oh man. So the traps go on, and the movie just kind of makes it takes you in these directions where it's like, oh my goodness, how are they going to make it out of this? I know he has to, but how? And that's when the movie got me. Like, I knew what was going to happen, eventually to John Kramer. But I was like, okay, I'm really interested to see how this is going to go. Then there's a kid that gets involved, so I'm even more involved. Because I'm like, okay, are they going to kill a kid? It's a good movie. It's a really good film. I highly recommend it. It's the season for scaries. Go and see Saw X. Even if you have no desire to see it, just check it out at least. I owe the movie that much. Go and see it. It's just a very interesting a very interesting film to make in this franchise, this late in the franchise. And then there's a cameo here at the very end where I was like, okay, I see what's going on here. And I'm almost to the point where I just want to watch the entire series in chronological order, by the way. I want to watch the entire series from chronological order, beginning to the end. I guess the last movie would be Spiral, if that's the case. Which I don't know if they're making another Spiral. I wish they would. But yes, I'm all for Saw X. Go and see it if you haven't already. Man, that was good. That was a good little ride. A surprising ride nonetheless. But I had a pretty good time watching that one. And as far as reviews for right now, I think that's gonna be it for the moment. Um, I'm not gonna go and see Taylor Swift the Eras Tour next week, so don't look forward to a review from that one. For obvious reasons. I think that's it. I think that's all I want to talk about this time around. I think as time goes on, we'll talk about some of the older films that kind of came out that I kind of missed. I do still want to review Oppenheimer a little bit, maybe some Barbie. I don't think I did a full review on Spider-Verse, so I apologize. I did say I was going to get that out, but that never really happened, so I might have to do that soon. But yeah, I hope that each and every last one of you have enjoyed the episode so far. For those that stuck around, I have been keeping this trend where I do talk about my weight loss journey. So at the time of this recording in particular, I weighed in this past Monday and I'm officially down 107 pounds. Yes, 107 pounds. If you would have asked me this time last year, I would not have believed you. Actually, yeah, I think it was maybe the 28th is when I officially started my journey. And I want to say November is when I actually took it seriously. So it's been less than a year. I'm over 107 pounds. I've learned so much about myself and my body, how things work. I feel so much better about myself. I feel so much better about my body. It's just so much that it has come with just losing weight. It's kind of crazy. I can't really explain it in good terms. I'm still in that period where I'm trying to lose the feeling of regret. And the regret that I have is that I didn't start the journey sooner. But, you know, it's my journey. I'm doing with it what I can. And I'm so glad that it's working the way that it is. So I appreciate everyone that's kind of checked in and asked about it. Everyone that I've kind of spoken with has been in good spirits with me about it. So I really appreciate y'all for listening and being happy for me. But I think that's gonna be it. I think that's it this time. So thank you for tuning in. Once again, it's been your host, your editor, director, creator, DJ, producer. I don't know if I said that already. Music man. And most importantly, I'm your first, your last, and your everything. It's been Dom. It's been another episode of the Dom Trap. And I will see y'all later. Peace.